Hey guys, so a while ago I promised you a video on the baby names that we love but won't be using. Our baby is still nameless. We have 3 weeks to go. We're between two, and at this point I think we just need to see him and see if he looks like one or the other. I'm not going to share the two names that we're tossed up between. We actually haven't shared it even with our families, but I will share with you all of the other names that we tossed around. Some of these names have been like my favorite baby name since I was pregnant with Addie. Dan and I have a really hard time agreeing on baby names because he likes really, I don't know if I should say like traditional, very like Italian names, and I like more different, unique names that you may have never even heard or like aren't common. Good news is though, we have narrowed it down to two. Let's do the girl names first. For some reason, I have really easy time coming up with girl names and a really hard time coming up with names for boys. I love every single one of these girl names that I'm gonna share with you. If this was a girl, I think it would have been really challenging naming her. So, and for some reason, looking at this list, like, I gravitate towards a lot of C names. I don't know why. I've always kind of liked these names. It's weird. A lot of them start with a C, but there's no rhyme or reason behind that. Let's go down the list of names that I loved for a girl. The first one is Capri. I love this name. I forget where I heard it years and years ago, and it's just kind of always stuck with me. I think it sounds so beautiful. I love that it's like short and clean, just different. I also have always loved the name Claire. When I think of a Claire, I think of just like a very gentle, sweet girl. Also love the name Collins. Dan wasn't crazy about this one, and I know that it's different. Girl in the movie The Blind Side's name was Collins, the sister. She's actually a real life girl. Just have always loved that name. Charlotte was always one of my top names. And then when Princess Kate and William named their daughter Charlotte, I kind of X'd it from my list because I knew it was going to become really popular. But I always loved the name Charlotte Claire, and I would have maybe called her Cece for short. I always thought that was really cute. But then as soon as they named their daughter, I kind of was like, ugh, it's going to be such a popular name. Although, I don't know if it's popular or not. I love the name Cassidy, and I would spell it differently. I would spell it Cassadee, and then Kensington, and I would call her Kenzie for short. I feel like the name Kensington is just very feminine and strong, and I like that you have the option of shortening it if you wanted to, but it's just a really beautiful name. Also, kind of sticking with that, I've always loved the name Remington, and I would have called her Remy for short. I just think that's so sweet, and I've never really heard anybody else's daughter name that, I think, except on Teen Mom. One of the dads remarried, and I think their daughter's name is Remy. My number one name, I actually had 3 front runners before we found out this baby was a boy, and my number one was Isla, I-S-L-A, although that is becoming more popular. I've always loved the name since Isla Fisher. She's an actress. She's beautiful and just has like a really unique look about her, and I've just always loved the name Isla. Sadie has always been one of my favorite names. Big Business was a movie I grew up watching, and one of their character names in the movie was Sadie, and it's just always stuck with me. And Quinn, which could also be a boy's name, but I really just loved it for a little girl. I like that it's different. I like that it starts with a Q. And the only other name I had on here was Reese, which isn't super unique, but it's just always a name that I really loved. And then I also had Elle, E-L-L-E. Whether I would name her Eleanor or Eloise, I would probably do something longer and then call her Elle for short. I always liked the name Elle. My other name for Addie, when we didn't know if Addie was a girl or a boy, my 2 girl names were Addison and Gianna. She was almost a Gianna, and that was another one of those like split second. She was born and she just, to me, looked like an Addison, but she was almost a Gianna. Always loved the name Isabel too. Those are all of the girl names that I have loved. For boys, a little bit trickier. So my number one boy name when I was pregnant with Addie was always Jackson. If Addie was gonna be a boy, my 2 names were Jackson and Brody, and I would have spelled Jackson Jackson. But since then, Jackson has become so popular. There's a little boy across the street named Jackson. It's just one of those names that's super popular. I still really love it, but it wouldn't have been an option for us. He did like the name Brody. That was one of those names Dan was like, oh, I kind of don't hate that. And that was always one of my names for the last 6 years, but I still like the other two that we have right now better than Brody. But Brody is another name that I don't hear often. Again, with the C names, Cash is like my #1 boy name, but Dan did not like the name Cash. I've always loved the name Cash. I think it's super different. I think Jessica Alba's husband's name is Cash, and I heard that years and years and years ago, and it just always kind of stuck with me. But Dan never even like entertained the idea. He just didn't like that name. Really love the name Luke. Funny story, but Jake, our dog, almost was a Luke, but we had Lucy at the time, and I was still living at my parents' house, and my mom kind of talked me out of the name Luke because she thought Luke and Lucy was just too close and confusing when we were training. But I've just always loved the name Luke or Lucas. Dan's favorite boy name is Dominic, and it's not that I hate the name, but all I think of when I hear the name Dominic is the Christmas Dominic the Donkey song. And I just did not want to correlate those two together. If you've ever heard that song, you know what I'm talking about. It's one of those songs that's like cute and funny but gets stuck in your head. Hi. So we kind of scratched that.
Mama.
What are you doing? I love the name Dimitri. It's actually my dad's name in Greek. His name is James, but his Greek name is Dimitri, and I've always loved that name. Funny enough, but one of Addison's good friends from kindergarten, little brother's name is Dimitri. Another name that I loved for a boy, but Dan hated, was Rhett. Not after the country music star, but I just love the name Rhett, and I also love the name Hudson. Dan hated both of those. Other two names that I had on here were Graham and Carson, and Carson could have been for a girl or a boy. He wasn't crazy about either of those. Their boy name I really loved was Ford, but I know that I never would have like lived it down having a Ford and a Bentley. Like, what do you always name your kids after cars? Sticking with that, I've always loved the name Portia too for a girl, but again, I don't know why. I'm like not like a car person. It's just I like these car names, and Bentley wasn't named after or like related to a car. When we came up with the name Bentley, it wasn't even like a thought that it was a car, and then everybody pointed it out to us. Super weird. I don't know. Those are all of the boy names that we had. Like I said, it was just much easier for me to come up with girl names than it is boy names. It's been a challenge, but I'm actually shocked that we have two names that we potentially could use. Both we kind of go back and forth. I will end up sharing whatever name we don't choose for this little guy, but I hope that was kind of helpful. Maybe gave you guys some ideas if you're on the struggle bus with naming your baby. I like watching these videos because I've heard a lot of names that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise. Hope you guys enjoyed getting a little peek into my brain. I will say out of the two names that we have, the first name was kind of like it, and it was stuck, and we loved it. And then we were talking about it another day, and I mentioned this other name, and he's like, I actually really like that name. So it kind of has made us go back and forth. And it's funny because we'll talk about it sometimes, and Dan will be like, I'm kind of going back to the first name, and I'm like, oh, I'm really stuck on the second name. And then just last week, he's like, you know, that second name, he's like, I really could see it. And I'm like, really? Because I was going back to the first name. So we just kind of agreed to like wait and see what this little boy looks like and name him when he's born. We do have the middle name down, which I will keep for a surprise, but we both really love the middle name. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you in my next one. Bye.